Hello everyone, my name is Jeff Neville and welcome to Selective Imagery. I started taking pictures when I was 7 or 8 years old, and I really shoot just about everything. And here's some samples of what I take, whether it be sunrises, alligators, birds. It's what I do a lot of right now. But I also do macro, I'll do small animals, and I'll do street photography, and I'll use my old cameras to take some black and white photos with. So here's a sample of one of my cameras coming up. So I'm a generalist, but right now I'm focused a lot on wildlife and birds in particular. So I hope you enjoy my channel, and let's get right to the show. Welcome to a discussion on tripod heads. Hello everyone, this is Jeff Neville for Selective Imagery. We're going to talk about tripod heads, and there's a wide variety of types. I'm going to talk about ones that I've personally tried, many of which that I own, and I will show you the ones that I own and why you may want to buy them, why you may not want to buy them. I will mention other types of heads that I've never had the opportunity or need to use, and refer to you to basically just go to YouTube and look up those other types if you have an interest in them, since I'm not going to get into any detail about them. But we're going to start off, before we even get into the tripod head discussion, you have to talk a little bit about tripods themselves. Now I'm going to show you a few ball heads, and I'm going to mount them on a old Manfrotto monopod. And no matter what type of tripod head you're going to use, you need to know, okay, what do you need? How are you going to mount it? What is your thread diameter on the bottom of your tripod head? Okay, is it a 1/4 20 or is it a 3/8 16? Now, some tripod heads will have a reversible threaded rod which this one is. I could spin this top off, pop out this threaded rod and reverse it, and now it's a 1/4 20 instead of a 3/8. But make sure that you see what you have so you buy the correct type of head. Or if you want the larger one, if you have a heavy load, you have heavy gear, I would recommend that you want to use the 3/8 inch diameter rather than the 1/4. So something to be aware of. Now we're going to talk about ball heads first, and these are the most common heads that you're going to find. If you have any department stores around you that may or may not have, if they have a very small camera department, you may find some inexpensive tripods there that have ball heads already attached. You'll find a lot of that type of equipment at Best Buy, because they don't typically sell real high-end tripods. They have some that are pretty decent, but if you're talking something in that $100 range or $150, $100 to $200 range, that's a tripod with a head attached, it's usually going to be a ball head. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount this particular one on the top of this monopod, just to make it easier for me to have a discussion. And that's that. And now the load weight is very, very important. And tripod heads, whether they're ball heads, fluid heads, doesn't matter what type of head, they'll all have a maximum load weight. And you're going to need to know that. So if you're doing video and you have a small rig on your mirrorless camera and you attach a monitor, and you go and you attach a lighting system and a microphone and other things, you need to know the weight of the lens you're going to use, the camera body, all these accessories, and make sure that you buy a tripod head that exceeds that load rate, that amount of load that you're going to put onto it. And I would try to make sure that it's at least 30% higher than what you're ever going to put on it, if not more. If you can afford one that's double the weight that you would ever put on it, and you can afford it, go for it, because your system may change over the years, or you may go from having a 400 millimeter lens someday to getting an 800 millimeter lens, and then say, oh, oops, now my head isn't rated high enough for what I'm using, and then you got to go out and spend money all over again. So most tripod heads are what they call Arca Swiss compatible, and all that Arca Swiss is basically talking about the design of the plate that mounts to your lens foot if you have a long telephoto or zoom lens, or the plate that you might mount on the base of your camera body, or the L bracket that you might mount on your camera, so that you can change your orientations easier, and that will say Arca Swiss compatible. So if you're using an Arca Swiss bracket on your camera, then you want to make sure that the tripod head is Arca Swiss compatible, because Manfrotto gear, made in Italy, they have their own proprietary plate system, and they are not Arca Swiss compatible, and we'll get into that in a later discussion. So we're looking at this. This is a head that I own. This is an Oben ball head, model BE-117. It has a 17.6 pound maximum load rating. My Z9 with an 800 PF lens weighs about 8.2 pounds. So this is more than double the capacity of what I would put on it. So this is more than robust enough. Now, you have, when you look at this, you have a small knob on the side, and this is the knob that locks your pan motion. Right now, it's tightened up. I cannot rotate this body, okay, on this monopod at all. I loosen it up, and this is one thing that you want to find out before you buy something online, because they may not tell you. When you loosen up this knob, for many ball heads, it's free spinning now. I could tap it and it would spin around like crazy on a lot of the models. On this particular one, there is built-in friction, and whether I have this knob backed off halfway or all the way backed out, the friction stays the same. Okay, you can see that I have that friction in here. Okay, now I'm going to tighten that up again, and you have graduations on the base that are for when you're doing panoramics. Use it as a guide for setting up your panoramic shots. You have a larger friction control knob, and this blue band has numbers that go all the way around it, numbered 11 to 12. So, or excuse me, 0 to 12. And at 0, this ball head moves really loose. And a lot of ball heads have at least one groove in it, so that you can have 90-degree orientation of your camera by rotating that ball head so that the stem falls into the groove. Now, when you put your camera on here, you want to make sure the friction is enough so that once the camera is on, if I went to 12, that's the highest friction setting. That means this ball head is not going to move up to its maximum load rate of 17.6 pounds. It's just not going to move. And the plate, you know, some of the tops of these heads have pins. Some plates that come with them have socket head screws, top and bottom. You see it above my thumb and below my other finger on the top here. Socket head cap screws. You drop it on the top. Excuse me, tighten it up a little, but not all the way. And basically, okay, it's not, your camera is not going to fall out if this knob loosened up a little bit. Okay, if this knob loosens up a little bit, you know that your camera isn't going to fall off the cliff. But you know, you line it up how you want it and you tighten it up accordingly, and you make sure that the friction knob is tight enough so that you have some resistance when you're rotating this around. And that your lens just can't, you know, the camera just doesn't drop down because this is too loose. And that's about it. You adjust it to the friction you feel comfortable with, where it's safe for your camera body and your lens that you have on here. You have a bubble level at the top, okay, for leveling it. Most tripod heads have a bubble level on them. The only, like the negative to the ball heads is when you want to do a landscape shot or you're at the ocean and you want the horizon to be perfectly straight. You know, this may be pretty stiff because of your friction adjustment, and you know, you're looking down and you're trying to make sure it's level, and it's not automatic. It takes a few seconds to do that. Okay, and but you find these heads on a lot of tripods because they're lightweight. Travel tripods have a variation of a ball head design. They may not have a panoramic feature. It may just be the rotating feature, depending on what brand travel tripod you buy. And many of them, you can remove the head that comes with the travel tripod and buy an accessory that'll allow you to use any kind of tripod head that you want. But just be aware of that. You know, make sure you see what it comes with. Do you like what it comes with? Are you going to replace the head? Make sure that you can replace the head. Okay. And I bought this one particularly for something that I didn't end up doing. Is I bought it for going to Africa. I didn't want to spend a lot of money. This is like $85, and I wanted to have something that I could mount my camera gear on, and I could hang the camera upside down from the safari vehicle. Okay, extend these legs as much as I want, hang it down, remotely trigger the camera to take a picture, and have it near ground level so I get that low angle shot, you know, for the lions laying in the grass or whatever, which I wouldn't be able to do because a lot of safari adventures you're going to be in areas where you cannot get out of the vehicle. So the only way you get what appears to be a low angle shot is if you have a long telephoto lens on your camera or a long zoom lens and the object's very far away, so that your angle that you're shooting at isn't steep like this. It gives you that appearance of a low angle shot. So that's why I bought this particular one. So I'm going to move on and put a different head on here, and we're going to talk about another different type of ball head that costs a heck of a lot more than $85, and then we'll explain why it costs a lot more than $85. So we will be back in a minute. So here we are to talk about the second type of ball head. This is called an Acrotech GP. Okay. Bought this in 2018, $575. You're saying, what? Why would you spend that much money? Okay, well, hopefully when I'm done, you'll realize why it costs what it costs. It is literally a marvel of engineering. Okay, it's machined, it's beautifully made, it's very accurate. And if you look underneath the ball head, see the light shining through? Okay, that ball head is an open design. It's a larger ball head than what you're going to find on most ball head type tripod heads. And there's clearance underneath all the way. You can drop this in the sand or be in the desert and it's not going to get bound up. And if it gets all dirty, mud or whatever, you just rinse it off with water and it's going to work perfectly. So that's reason number one. It's lightweight because a lot of material that you don't need has been machined off of this. Therefore, the open ball head design. You have a rubberized knob for your panning. Loosen it up, and you have a slight resistance, but it spins a lot easier than the previous one that I talked about. You have two knobs for friction adjust for your ball head. Well, one is actually, the larger one is a locking knob. So if I turn this all the way tight, you're not moving this knob no matter what. It's good. I mean, you may want to have this knob tightened all the way when you go put your camera on top. And then once it's on top and you can have one hand on the camera, you can back this off, adjust this friction knob to get the level of friction you want without the camera dropping one way or the other. You can adjust that. Okay. What's neat about this camera, it has that scalloped area where you can drop the stem of the ball head into that groove. But if you have that friction knob loosened all the way, you have basically two types of heads in one, because with that in the vertical position and the friction knob loosened up, I could spin this all the way around, no friction at all, vertical movement, just like a gimbal. It acts like a gimbal head. So I got my up and down, I loosen up the knob for the panning, I got my horizontal movement, I've got my vertical movement. And I won't get into arguments about if it's better than a gimbal head, but I'll tell you, it gives you the capability to have gimbal head functionality without having to spend the money for a separate gimbal head. It may not be quite as convenient to use as a gimbal head, but it's, obviously the head is nowhere near the size. It's a lot smaller than a gimbal head would be. So I'm not going to defray you from getting a gimbal head. But I'm just saying, if you want to have a little extra functionality that you're not going to find on other ball heads, this is pretty cool. This is pretty cool. You look at the top. You got your bubble level. Okay, here you have a spring-loaded pin, Arca Swiss compatible. This pin with the right type of plate mounted on your camera body, lens foot, L bracket, Arca Swiss compatible. It'll hit that pin, so if this knob loosens up, your camera's not going to fall into the Atlantic. Okay. I mean, the knob shouldn't loosen up, but you could bump it, or you never know, right? So the pin is a safety measure. You can get it with a knob to tighten up against the plate, or you can get a lever that you just move and lock, like you have on other brands. So you have two different approaches to tightening the plate, and then you have your markings for doing panos. But this thing is lightweight because you got rid of, structurally it is built like a tank, but it doesn't have the excess material that's been machined out and hogged out, and that's what gives you that open ball head at the bottom and makes it for easier cleaning and without compromising its load capacity, and it's just a phenomenal design. So that's that model. They don't make this one, like I said. They make a GP-SS now on B&H. It sells for $417.95. It looks very similar to this, but I didn't do a blow-by-blow comparison, but it looks pretty close to being this similar, very similar to this model that's no longer made. Another kind of head that I'll talk about, I don't have one to show you, is called a pan and tilt head, and those have two long handles that come out, one at the bottom, one near the top. The one at the bottom frees up the panning action, and then it has a separate friction knob adjustment for your panning function, so you can determine how smooth you pan, how much resistance you want when you're panning, going across horizontally. And then the other release lever on the top is for your tilt action up and down. That also has a separate friction knob on it, so you can adjust how tight you go up and down with that. They're bigger than the ball heads. They're heavier, but functionally, hey, they work fantastic, and you may choose you want one like that. It's important that you look at different brands. Just don't forget about the load limit. Okay, make sure that you factor in everything that you might slap on top of that camera, whether it be a small rig setup with lighting and microphones and everything else, and now you've added a lot of weight. You want to make sure that you have the capacity, and I mentioned that earlier. So I don't have one to show you, but it's not overly complicated to talk about, so I figured I'd at least talk about it. I'm going to show you a gimbal head next, but I'm also going to just mention some heads that are out there that I'm not going to talk about. That you could go to other YouTube channels where people might do reviews on these other types, or look for them in the store if you're interested. They have geared heads, okay, that have a finite control over distance, close distance for macro. Okay, you might want to look into a geared head. They have heads that are specifically designed for panoramic heads. They have what they call camera cranes and jibs. That's more for professional Hollywood types. It's like a crane system, that a boom that comes way out off your legs, and those I'm not going to get into. I'll never own one of those. And then you have pistol grip heads, which are basically a ball head with a pistol grip. So instead of the knobs that you loosen and move the ball head by hand, or move it with the camera on it, you have a pistol grip, and you grab that and you squeeze it, and you move the ball head around, and then when you release the trigger, basically, it locks the head in place. And so those are kind of neat, but obviously size-wise they're big, because you got that pistol grip on there. So once again, if that's something that you're interested in, you're going to want to go to a store, a local store, to see that. So in the next clip we'll talk about gimbals. Here we are for a discussion on gimbal heads. So here we go. I've got my D850 with the 500 PF mounted on this gimbal head. And when you do everything right, you get it so that when you tilt the lens down, it stays that way. When you tilt the lens up, it stays that way. You loosen the pan. You're following a bird in flight. You can go up and down. You can go left and right. You can do whatever you want, okay? The panning action, there's no resistance. I could spin this sucker around like this all day long. Okay? So, you can see where this works extremely well. Now, this particular unit is a Movo GH800 carbon fiber tripod. It's average price. It's not the cheapest you can buy. It's not the most expensive. It was $179. It has a 33-pound load capacity. It's going to be pretty hard for you to find 33 pounds of equipment to put on something like this, even if you're shooting video. So the whole idea of this is that you have that freedom of motion and that ability to follow a subject. And if you let go of your camera, you don't want it to come down and whack. You want the friction knob enough so that you're not hitting this thing. That when you put your camera on here, it ain't going to fall down and whack, damage itself. Okay? So it's Arca Swiss compatible. Okay. This adjustment that you see over here is to move this base up and down if you have to, due to the size of your gear, so that you're not hitting anything else and that you have free movement. That's really all that's for. And there is a scale facing me where I can record, where it's set at. But once you have it set, I mean, you should be good. To balance this, basically what you're doing is you're loosening this knob. You have the pan locked. You have the friction knob locked all the way. Initially, you mount your camera on this plate. You open up that friction knob all the way, and you slide the foot back and forth so that when you're in this horizontal position, okay, that the camera doesn't start going downhill or start going uphill like this. Okay, you'll know it's balanced once you have that foot in the right position, where even with no friction adjustment, it just sits there perfectly level. And once it's at that state, then you tighten up the knob, and then you're okay with that respect. But what would happen, it may be level now, but if you start the movement downward, it'll just flop down all the way because you don't have any friction yet. So you need to adjust the friction knob here, okay, so that you have enough friction so the lens can stay in position once you angle it up or angle it down. Okay, that's when it's the way you want it to be. And with the panning knob loosened up, then you have full movement to track a bird. Sports photographers use it for football. And here's how free moving it is when that panning knob is loosened up. I could just sit here and I could twirl this thing around all day. Some people may not like it that free, okay, but usually they're pretty. You may have some on the very high-end models. You may have a little bit more friction in that. You may have a little bit more friction adjustment, but on the cheaper models, typically it's on or off. It's locked or it's not locked. I mean, that's about. Once again, you worry about load capacity. Make sure you're not going to have a problem there. If you were to change lenses or add more weight to this, maybe you got a video setup, you'd want to add another light. As soon as you add another light, your balance is off, okay? You got to go through the whole thing and, loosen up the friction knob, hold your camera, slide it back and forth, the foot back and forth, with this thing being level and above the center post. And you get that right, tighten it down, then you adjust the friction to where things stay where you want it, and you're good to go. Okay, obviously something like this, you can see why people don't always take one of these when they go traveling, because it's just it's large. It's large to put in a piece of luggage. The pros can do it. They're getting paid. They can ship all their stuff in a crate wherever they're going if they wanted to, and As long as they got a willing client, they're going to pay for all that extra cost. But you as a amateur, serious amateur photographer, you got to figure out what's important for you to bring with you on your trip. And that's about it. So for the last head I'm going to talk about, it's going to be a fluid head that I recently purchased. And I don't know, I'll try setting it up where I have it in front of the screen like this when I'm talking. We'll see how that goes, or I may have to video it with my cell phone and do the video that way. But we'll move on to that. Okay, here we are to talk about fluid heads. This is like take number 10 for me, believe it or not. As you can see, I have my Z9 with my 800 PF attached to my new Manfrotto 608 Nitro Tech fluid head. And I will spin it around without whacking myself and knocking myself out so you can see everything briefly. And so you go, what about fluid heads? Well, obviously people in cinema have been using them for decades probably. But now with mirrorless coming to its own age, with all the video features you have in mirrorless cameras, some people want to get a fluid head for some of the benefits that I'll talk about in a few minutes, and they want to investigate them and look into them and see if it makes sense to do it. And they're not for everyone, okay? You usually mount these on a hefty set of tripod legs, which I'll show you what I consider a hefty set of tripod legs. This is an old Manfrotto carbon fiber setup. But if you want to get a good set of legs nowadays, whether it be a conventional tripod legs or a video-centric tripod legs, $500 and up is where I would be looking. I mean, this model I bought, I don't know, 8 years ago was almost $1,000 just for that. The 608 Nitro Tech fluid head's $608 right now at B&H. Okay, you can get a little bit cheaper if you buy it direct from the company. And it weighs 4.9 pounds, so not only is it expensive, it's heavy, 4.9 pounds. And it's not Arca Swiss compatible. If you want Arca Swiss compatible, you have the Manfrotto plate that has a scale on it, mounts to your foot. You'd have to get something that goes between the plate and the foot that has a separate locking level to facilitate locking on the Arca Swiss plate that would be on your foot now, and you're going to spend anywhere, say, $75 to $130 to get something to do that third party. So why buy it? Well, for video use, you want to be able to pan and tilt, and be able to tilt down and have it stay there like a gimbal. You want to be able to go downwards. You want to be able to be level. You want to be able to go up, and you want it to stay there. And you want to be able to adjust the friction in the tilting movement and in the panning movement. Okay, and you're using fluid to do that. So the basically, if you took the handle off of this unit and you have everything balanced right, you can move it around, you know, panning, tilting, like a gimbal. Okay, I haven't tried that yet, but many people have. It'll work like a gimbal. Why wouldn't it? It has the same movement. Okay, so you don't need to use a gimbal. Of course, a gimbal is significantly cheaper, but there are things that obviously this can do that a gimbal can't. Otherwise, why would you buy it, right? But if you find yourself, if you're a photographer, a wildlife photographer, or even a sports photographer, but you're shooting stills 90% of the time, you probably can't justify the expense, okay? For the few times you're doing quick video clips, you can't really, you know, justify it. If you got a YouTube channel and your video content is starting to come close to equaling the stills that you put on your video, then maybe you're going to consider it. And definitely if you're someone who gets paid to do it, to do videos, and you're getting paid customers, then you're seriously going to look into it. The price point varies greatly. You can get an inexpensive fluid head on sale for maybe $150. You could spend thousands of dollars on a fluid head. So what do you buy? So we're going to talk about how they work and what types there are. So if you have a high level tripod now, then you're probably not going to want to buy a specific video head. I mean, if you got money to burn, then you will, and you'll have, you know, one tripod for photos and another heavy duty tripod for video. But for me, I wasn't ready to go to that extreme yet. I bought the head. I want to use the legs that I already have. So I got a fluid head mount that has a flat base, and a flat base is like this ball head, flat base. And many people think that's all there is, but that's not true anymore. You have what they call bowl type fluid heads, where instead of being flat, it's like a ball. Okay, it's like a ball, and it sits in a special set of tripod legs, where instead of having a flat plate, you have basically a cavity that's like a soup bowl, let's say. Okay, so the ball sits in there. There's a hole in the bottom. You have a shaft that comes up from underneath in between your tripod legs that you engage that ball with, and you tighten it up. And you go, well, so what's the big deal? Why do I want that? Because when you're out in the field and you're fooling around with your tripod legs forever to try to get everything perfectly level with your bubble level, and you're just a little bit off, and you get tired of moving one leg a half an inch, another leg a quarter inch, and trying to get it perfect. With that bowl set up, you just loosen it from underneath. You rotate it. You got all this freedom of movement. You rotate it until the bubble level is perfect, and you tighten it up, and you're done. Time is money, right? You save yourself a lot of time and a lot of money. What's the disadvantage to that system? You can't put it on a slider. So when Jerry Gionis did that nice video, the capabilities of the Z9, had that wonderful singer walking down the stairs, and basically had it motorized, following her movements, and filming. The slider, you can't do that unless you have a flat base model. You have a crane system where you have a boom that sticks out 6 feet, 5 feet with a counterbalance mechanism, and it's your mount is 5 feet away, 6 feet away, or longer. A lot of those will only work with the flat-based type, although there are some out there that will now accept the bowl type configuration, which is either the ball or the bowl is 75 millimeters or 100 millimeters in size. Now, so that's where you're at with that. The other disadvantage is, depending on how long the handle is underneath that you use to tighten up the ball, if it hangs down real low, it may not allow you to lower your tripod far enough, low enough to the ground. So that's another thing that could be a disadvantage for you. My model has a flat base, and I have this other device here, which I'll talk about, which is I got tricky, and I bought what's called an iFootage QL-I leveler. And with the flip of a lever, it's like a half ball that's flat, comes up, and then it's flat on the top with the threads for the tripod. So it mounts to the tripod head. The tripod head mounts to the leveler. I flip this switch. I can get 15 degrees rotation all the way around to tweak my leveling capability without fooling with the legs as much. Look at the bubble level, get it right, flip the lever, I'm locked in, I'm good. $79. Other companies make similar things, some of which cost hundreds of dollars, but this works fine for me. So in the end, you want to have, like I said, you want the ability to have smooth panning motion, and where you can adjust the friction adjustment with fluid, which is more accurate. And you have a fluid drag system or friction system for your vertical adjustments as well. Okay, and then you have it set up where it's like a gimbal. Okay, so let's move on. So what do you do here? Okay, well, let me just give you a description of the parts on this gimbal quickly. You have a locking mechanism for the tilt function. You can lock it. So if you, like I said, this can counterbalance between 0 and 17.6 pounds of weight, this particular model, but it has a load limit of 30.9 pounds. So if you have something that weighs more than the counterbalancing, what that means is you have to basically use it like a ball head in a way, where you adjust it where you want it and you lock it, and you can have 30.9 pounds on this. But if you want to be able to adjust things and counterbalance things so that you can do this, you're limited to that 0 to 17.9 pounds. If you got a heavier weight, it might start at 8 pounds to 30. Okay? But if it weighs less than 8 pounds, once again, you can't counterbalance it. It doesn't mean you can't use it. It means you can't counterbalance it, that you have to hold on to the handle, set it where you want, and lock it in place. And that's not the end of the world. So it just changes the functionality a little bit. Okay? So when you look down here, this is a fluid drag system for your panning that you can adjust. This is a panning lock mechanism to lock it so you cannot pan at all. Okay? You go over here, you have a bubble level right here, and you have a button that you can push that illuminates that bubble level at night. Okay? You have your fluid drag knob here to adjust the drag on your tilting motion. You have the tilt lock that I've already talked about, like quarter turn, you're locked. Okay? And then you have the continuous, in this case, this is called a continuous counterbalance system. So it can counterbalance anything between that 0 and 17.6 pounds. Now, when you buy the cheap fluid head, it might not have any settings at all, because basically it's like, in that case of the cheaper one, it's like a spring, okay? So it tries to constantly pull back. When your lens is down like this, it's trying to pull back against the lens to counteract the weight, okay? So this doesn't go slamming down. But when you have one that has just a non-adjustable setting, it's probably for very small camera bodies with very small lenses, like a 70 to 200, not for something that has a lot of weight to it. Okay, but then you got this, and then what you're probably doing is sometimes you have to apply more of the fluid drag to your tilting motion to compensate for the lack of range that the counterbalance mechanism has. Now, other ones have a click numbering system. It might be 1 through 3, 1 through 5, you know, that type of thing. And as you increase the number, you now set that counterbalance so that it can handle more weight. But what happens if your system is between the weight of everything, your camera, your video equipment, your small rig, your lights, your mics, and everything else is between a 4 and a 5? Well, you can't adjust it between a 4 and a 5. This one you could, because it's continuous, and that's why you're paying more money for it. It doesn't make the other ones bad. Okay, let me emphasize that. It does not make the other ones bad. It just makes this a little easier, and you're not counting so much on the fluid drag, because you're going to compensate for that lack of being continuous, where you're going to increase the drag a little more so that it does not bounce around or start to lift up or start to fall down, and it stays level when you want it level. And that's the only thing I've seen where with adjusting this, where you get the down adjusted perfect, you got the up adjusted perfect, but sometimes when you want it like perfectly level, it wants to spring a little bit. Like if you just go down an inch, you know, it wants to go back up to being flat again. You might have to tweak the drag a little bit. Okay, so it's not like you don't have to use the drag at all, but I'm sure if I wanted to spend more time with the counterbalance adjustment, I wouldn't have to use the drag at all. But I'm just saying, okay. You can put the handle, okay, on either side, attaching to this. This is not Manfrotto specific. You can use, I think it's called ARRI attachments. We'll attach to this as well, or Manfrotto attachments. And what makes this continuous is when you look in here, that is a nitrogen piston. There's nitrogen in there. That's why they call it the Nitrotech. And you have a nitrogen piston in there, and that's what gives it the continuous counterbalance versus other types. And if you want to learn more about the difference between gimbals and fluid heads, go to Scott Key's channel. Let me find the name of his show. It's called Wildlife Inspired with Scott Keys. Excellent guy. Stumbled across him. Has 3 videos. One comparing a gimbal head to a fluid head. One comparing, you know, different price point gimbal heads. I talked to him about that I might buy this counterbalance one. He has not reviewed counterbalance ones yet. He knows of this one. He knows of, you know, there's a model higher up than this. It's for heavier equipment. There's another brand that does it. And he says he might try to get a hold of those and do a video, but he hasn't done it yet. But I pulled the trigger. I made a decision what I wanted to do. And so far I like it. I'm going to, you know, attach another video to this discussion of some filming that I did using this. So far I like it. I have to tweak the friction adjustments for the panning a little bit better, because just like with a gimbal, if you have it set where there really is no adjustment on most of the gimbals, when it's free moving, unless you're thinking ahead as a filmmaker now, you're not doing stills, you're a filmmaker. If you're tracking a bird, okay, I could have this thing so loose that I could just touch this. I'm just touching this handle with one finger. Well, maybe that's a little bit too easy, and it's easy for me to overshoot what I'm tracking, or if I'm going from one group of birds to the other. I find myself going too fast. I slow down. It gives the appearance of jerky video, even though it's not jerky because it is. It's jerky because of this jerk, not the unit. Okay. So I got more learning to do with this. I see it replacing a gimbal. Take the handle off so it's not in your way, and you got full up and down, and you got full panning and a fully adjustable drag on the panning that you don't have with a gimbal. Okay, right? And then if you have a heavy load, you're using it kind of like a ball head. Okay, you're adjusting it to where you want for your photo, and you're locking the head, and you can have 30 pounds plus on this sucker. So now, why won't it replace everything that you have right now? Simply put, it's weight. are you going to travel with this? Unless you're getting paid, probably not. Will I never use my gimbal again? No, I will. Sometimes I'm not going to want to throw this in the car. I'll just use the gimbal on my monopod. Okay, but if I want something to be, or need something to be, absolutely as perfect as I can make it in terms of no shake, stability, flexibility, then yeah, I'm going to want to use this. So, as always, enjoy life, capture some of it, and we will see you again next time. So, here's a little video clip using the new head. Not a lot of panning that I did in this video. I mean, I have some other ones where I did some panning, but this was an enjoyable early morning view of wood storks with great egrets, and some feeding activity, and there was a slight fog over the flowers in the background, and it was just very enjoyable, and thought I would just share this one to close out this long discussion and give everybody a few minutes of relaxation and enjoyment of what wildlife photography is all about. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the clip, and I'll just sit back and let you watch it. And as always, I thank you for visiting the channel. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment, and wish you nothing but the best, and hope you get out there and get some great images of your own.